and his daughter. This latest action by Russia fits into a pattern of behavior in which Russia disregards the international rule-based order, undermines the sovereignty and security of countries worldwide, and attempts to subvert and discredit Western democratic institutions and processes. To my panel now, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, he's also former Florida Congressman Nile Gardiner, former special advisor to Lady Thatcher and current director of the Thatcher Center for Freedom at Heritage. Colonel West, let me start with you. This is the statement from the White House. What can we expect it to be followed up with respect to actions?
Well, I think that we have to come to understand that this was a chemical weapons attack. It was a nerve agent, and that is a substance that should be banned. It is banned. We saw the response that we had in Syria. So it was just a smaller magnitude, just 2 individuals. So I think that we need to look at expelling diplomats here from Russia. We also need to look at how do we isolate or expel Russia from the G-level economic summits that we have and other measures that we can put in place. I know that Nikki Haley is tackling this at the United Nations as well. This has to be a response from the international community, not just the UK and not just the United States.
Yeah, Colonel West, to that point, the media has suggested that the firing of Rex Tillerson was over him verbally condemning Russia, and somehow that offended President Trump. I don't think that the country understands the actions that we have taken against Russia during this administration.
Well, they're going to be cherry-picking anything that they can from the president because, this whole Russia collusion investigation has fallen apart, and they want to see more condemnation coming from the president's mouth. But I think actions need to speak louder than words right now.
Nile, Theresa May she's doing both. She is very vocal, very upset to the point where some are worried if this is she making too much of this, and is she promising too much with respect to in retaliation? Can she live up to the sort of retaliatory actions that she seems to be threatening beyond the expulsion of these diplomats?
I think Theresa May actually sent absolutely the right message to Moscow today, that Russia's barbaric actions on British soil, a violation of British sovereignty, threatening the lives of hundreds upon hundreds of British citizens, this is unacceptable, and that Britain and the free world will retaliate. So I think we saw great leadership today from Theresa May at the House of Commons, and we've seen a series of some very tough measures being implemented by the British government. I think most important of all, actually, is the message that this kind of brutal action by Russia will not be tolerated by the free world. It was great to see the very robust statement from the White House just a few minutes ago, and also the excellent statement by U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, expressing America's steadfast support for the United Kingdom and America's support for the Anglo-American special relationship.
Nile, dare we say it was Thatcher-esque?
I think, Theresa May had a very good day today. She certainly channeled some of the leadership qualities of Margaret Thatcher. And of course, Margaret Thatcher, my former boss, stood up to the Russian bear. She confronted the Russians with strength and resolve. That's exactly the right approach that we need today.
Yeah, I think it's the only thing that Russia, China, and a few other of our rivals understand, to be quite frank, and maybe why they've become so belligerent in recent years. Colonel West, I want to shift gears just a little bit because there's some speculation out that perhaps Attorney General Sessions will end up, firing former deputy FBI Director McCabe here. This ahead of his designed resignation, and I think the idea here is that he would not be eligible for his retirement, at least at the same level. What do you make of it?
Look, I think that's something that a very appropriate action. We already have Lois Lerner, who is retired with a 6-figure taxpayer-funded pension, and we know that she was guilty of some very egregious crimes against conservative grassroots organizations, and she continued to plead the fifth. We know that Andrew McCabe has had a hand in that Fusion GPS dossier that somehow got over to the secret FISA court and before that judge, and he admitted that that was the basis for the Russia investigation and all of this about collusion. So if he really needs some cash, he can go to the former governor of Virginia, because he was very successful in getting money for his wife's state senate campaign from Governor McAuliffe.
And finally, of course, I want to ask you about the confirmation of Mike Pompeo and Gina Haspel. Will it happen? We've already heard Rand Paul said he's not going to vote for them.
I think it will happen. I believe this is a critical time, and this is, you know, Mike Pompeo is going to have to work his way in. The State Department is very different from being the head of the CIA, but I think he's up to that challenge.
Nile, will we see any more actions from the UK, or has their message been heard by Russia?
I think we're going to see more action by the UK, and potentially, you know, the freezing of the bank accounts, assets of Russian oligarchs in the UK. After all, there's several hundred Russian oligarchs in Britain. They can be hit very, very hard by these financial measures. We also need to see Britain beefing up its military strength in Eastern Europe and the Baltic states as well.
You could have just said military strength. By the way, those oligarchs with those $100 million pads in London, wow. Thank you, gentlemen, very much.